Hi, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the last video of Shaketember 2024. We looked at Act 1 of King Lear 2 weeks ago. Have you read it or watched the play yet? What do you think? Do you feel sorry for King Lear and his tragic ending? Do you feel like, yes, it's tragic, but he kind of brought it on himself, though his two older daughters were pretty awful, so it's their fault too, but they both died in the end, which is a kind of justice, and the loyal Kent, Edgar and Albany lived, which is justice too. But Cordelia died, which is definitely not justice. We're discussing two topics today, one on self-knowledge and the other on the significance of clothes. Let's dive straight in with Lear himself. We see a very clear trajectory of character development with the theme of self-knowledge. The key words of Lear's character are listed by Kent one by one in a single speech in Act 1, Scene 1. After Lear disowns Cordelia and throws the kingdom at his evil daughters in two halves, Kent tries to stop him. Be Kent unmannerly when Lear is mad. I will speak without manner, out of turns, when I see you mad with rage, as well as when you do mad, irrational things. What wouldst thou do, old man? Think'st thou that duty shall have dread to speak when power to flattery bows? Do you think I'll be too afraid to speak up when I see your kingly power bows to flattery? To plainness honour's bound when majesty falls to folly. For honour's sake I will speak bluntly when you behave foolishly. What are the keywords here? Lear, you are mad, old and foolish. Firstly, mad. Lear is not mad here the same way as he is mad later, but you can't deny what he's doing, dividing the kingdom, giving up everything, disowning the only loving best daughter, is irrational, it's pure madness. Secondly, old. Lear knows he's old, that's why he decides to divide the kingdom. And 'tis our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strength, while we unburdened crawl towards death. But he hasn't really recognized what it means to be old. The naked truth from Kent is hard to take. It's like, I can say I'm old myself, but when other people say that I'm getting old, I still feel hurt and bitter, which means I probably haven't come to terms with it. Third, foolish. Lear has no idea what the consequences of his actions will be. It sounds really blunt and rude to say, Lear, you are mad, old and foolish. But Kent sees clearly and judges rightly. He is the boundary-crossing figure in this play who carries the plot forward. In a play where eyesight, blindness and seeing carry physical and metaphorical significance, Kent boldly says, see better, Lear, and let me still remain the true blank of thy eye. True blank is the white spot in the center of a target. Kent says, fix your eyes on me, then you'll always be able to see clearly and judge right. But Kent is banished. What does that imply? Do you notice the order of things at the two ends of the play? Lear loses Kent, Cordelia and Gloucester in that order at the beginning, and in reverse order he recognizes and reconciles with Gloucester, Cordelia and Kent at the end. I feel like Kent is easily neglected among all the drama with the women, but Kent is more important to Lear than even Cordelia, and definitely more important for the movement of the plotline. Mad, old and foolish. That's what the king is, and the king can neither see nor accept them. It takes the whole tragedy to open the king's eyes to that self-knowledge. The painful progress happens right in front of our eyes. What the loyal Kent cannot do in his rational, blunt scolding, the fool can in his witty words and songs. Can you make no use of nothing, nuncle? Why, no, boy, nothing can be made out of nothing. Prithee tell him, so much the rent of his land comes to, he will not believe a fool. Lear gives away all his land. He has nothing now. Nuncle, give me an egg, and I'll give thee 2 crowns. What 2 crowns shall they be? Why, after I have cut the egg in the middle and eat up the meat, the 2 crowns of the egg, when thou clovest thy crown in the middle, meaning split, and gavest away both parts, thou borest thine ass on thy back or the dirt. You did a stupid thing like carrying your ass over the mud so it doesn't get dirty. Thou hadst little wit in thy bold crown when thou givest thy golden one away. Again, it's foolish of you to give the golden crown on your head, your bold crown, away. When were you wont to be so full of songs, Sarah? I have used it, nuncle, ere since thou madest thy daughters thy mothers. For when thou gavest them the rod, and putst down thy own breeches, then they for sudden joy did weep, and I for sorrow sung, that such a king should play bo peep, and go the fools among. You made yourself dependent on your daughters. I'm sad, but they weep for joy when you hand over the rod and put down your trousers. You are a powerless child and a fool now. And all this happened in one scene. The fool is relentless. And Lear, who was angry and explosive with Kent, lets the fool carry on. Straight after that, Goneril confronts him about his knights. Lear explodes again, the same way as in Act 1, Scene 1, raging against his marble-hearted, thankless child. But what the fool said has clearly made marks, because Lear starts to regret his folly. Woe that too late repents. O Lear, 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 beat at this gate that let thy folly in, and thy dear judgment out. After the thunderous confrontation with Goneril, Lear has another quiet moment with the fool, where his passion and energy are spent and exhausted, where we see more of the honest sorrow and hollowness of the old man. The fool is less harsh about his folly this time. He tries to distract him with jokes and cheer him up. Lear listens and laughs half-heartedly while reflecting on the recent events. He admits he did Cordelia wrong. He was hurt by Goneril's ingratitude, and he thinks upon himself as a father. Thou shouldst not have been old till thou hadst been wise. Oh, let me not be mad, not mad, sweet heaven. Keep me in temper. I would not be mad. He now sees that he has not been wise. He puts himself in a vulnerable position. His mind is so tormented that he's worried he will go mad. But what can he do except go to his other daughter and hope for the best? His hope is dashed even before Regan and Cornwall appear, because the next thing he sees is Kent, who represents the king himself, locked up in humiliation. In addition to old, mad and foolish, there's a fourth element to Lear's character, rashness. His thunderous temper, which I see as the opposite of patience. Rashness is also picked up by Kent in the same speech we looked at earlier. Reverse thy state, and in thy best consideration check this hideous rashness. It was rash of him to divide the kingdom. It was rash of him to disown Cordelia and exile Kent. It was rash of him to curse Goneril and fall out with both daughters. It was rash of him to run out into the storm. Lear, in the heat of the argument with the 2 daughters, asks for patience. When Goneril and Regan attacked him with, "What need you 25, 10 or 5? What need 1?" He says, "You heavens, give me that patience I need." Which is a plea for strength to endure these wretched daughters, and on a deeper level to accept the consequence of all his rashness and to make peace with the suffering. But he then immediately follows with, "You see me here, you gods, a poor old man, as full of grief as age, wretched in both. If it be you that stirs these daughters' hearts against their father, fool me not so much to bear it tamely. Touch me with noble anger, and let not women's weapons, water drops, stain my men's cheeks. No, you unnatural hags, I will have such revenges on you both, that all the world shall. I will do such things. What they are, I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. You think I'll weep. No, I'll not weep. I have full cause of weeping, but this heart shall break into 100,000 flaws, or I'll weep. Oh, fool, I shall go mad. He asks for patience 1 second, and the next proclaims that he will not bear it tamely. I will revenge. He is still rash. However, he can't afford to be rash anymore. His lifelong pride and anger is no longer compatible with the reality that he is now nothing. Regan says, I pray you, father, being weak seems so. You are weak, old, without authority, dependent like a baby. Therefore, stop behaving like a tyrant. Lear could afford to behave however he liked when he was the real king. Now, he's just, as the fool says, Lear's shadow. It'll only work if he plays the infirm and weak part. But he won't. He's still too rash to accept that. But as long as he doesn't accept this reality, the torment in his mind will continue driving him mad. At this point, Lear seems to hold on to his old age and use it as leverage to rail against nature and fortune. You see me here, you gods, a poor old man, as full of grief as age, wretched in both. Here I stand, your slave, a poor, infirm, weak, and despised old man. But yet I call you servile ministers, that will with 2 pernicious, meaning destructive, daughters, join your high engendered battles against a head so old and white as this. He doesn't accept his old age as weakness, but brandishes it as a weapon. How could you do this to me? How could you treat me like this? I'm old. He's defiant as he rushes into the storm. To make the contrast really clear, let's put Act 1, Scene 2, the one we just read, and Act 4, Scene 7 side by side. After the storm passes, Lear wakes up in the presence of Kent and Cordelia. Pray, do not mock me. I am a very foolish, fond old man, 80 and upward, not an hour more nor less, and to deal plainly, I fear I am not in my perfect mind. You must bear with me, pray you now, forget and forgive. I am old and foolish. It's one of the most moving scenes. Lear is reborn through the storm. He opens his eyes from the watery death and sees, I am old, I am foolish, I am mad. We all know that he is. Everyone knows right from Act 1, Scene 1. The key thing in Act 4, Scene 7 is that Lear is saying these things out loud himself. He's finally admitting and accepting them in patience and peace. The most extraordinary thing is when he says it kneeling and asking for forgiveness from Cordelia and possibly from Kent too. He was so proud when he argued with Goneril and Regan about his 100 knights. He would never have said, bear with me, your aged father, humour me and put up with my 100 knights, please. Had he done so, I think there's a big chance that Goneril would have backed down. Regan says, Oh sir, you are old. Nature in you stands on the very verge of her confine, meaning you are not going to live much longer. You should be ruled and led by some discretion, by someone who is prudent, that discerns your state, your mental state, as well as your nation state, better than you yourself. But the proud, angry Lear would not be led by anyone. But at the end of Act 4, Scene 7, he was led off by Cordelia, fragile but tranquil. And when we next see him, he is led off by soldiers to prison. When Cordelia angrily says, Shall we not see these daughters and these sisters? No, 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 no. Come, let's away to prison. We two alone will sing like birds in a cage. When thou dost ask me blessing, I'll kneel down and ask of thee forgiveness. So we'll live and pray and sing and tell old tales and laugh at gilded butterflies and hear poor rogues talk of court news. And we'll talk with them too, who loses and who wins, who's in, who's out, and take upon the mystery of things, as if we were God's spies, and we'll wear out in a walled prison packs and sects of great ones that ebb and flow by the moon. He not only has peace about himself, but also with the world. He lets go of his 100 knights and moves from the center of court and the kingdom to an observer, God's spies. He is perfectly happy to spend the rest of his days in prison with his beloved daughter and to watch the world go by. It reminds me of the image Richard II creates before he goes to prison. Lear is more fortunate. He goes happily with someone he loves. The world is often a dangerous, complicated, hurting place. It's not all that bad to hide away with the person who's most dear to your heart and spend the rest of your life together. Also similar to Richard II, Lear becomes less of a king, but much better a man. Let's look at something else I noticed in the play, which is people's clothing. Shakespeare keeps drawing my attention to it. For example, in Delirium, Lear comments on poor Tom's blanket around his waist. You, sir, I entertain you for one of my 100. Only I do not like the fashion of your garments. You say they are Persian, but let them be changed. Gloucester, newly blinded, asks the old man to bring clothes to poor Tom. Is that the naked fellow? Aye, my lord. Then prithee, get thee away, if for my sake thou wilt o'ertake us hence a mile or twain, in the way toward Dover. Do it for ancient love, and bring some covering for this naked soul, which I'll entreat to lead me. Before Cordelia asks about her father's health, she asks if he's dressed. So please your majesty, that we may wake the king, he hath slept long. Be governed by your knowledge, and proceed in the sway of your own will. Is he arrayed? Aye, madam, in the heaviness of sleep we put fresh garments on him. A few minutes later, as if in response, Lear says, Methinks I should know you, and know this man. Yet I am doubtful, for I am mainly ignorant what place this is, and all the skill I have remembers not this garment, nor I know not where I did lodge last night. These mentions of what someone is wearing or not wearing do not advance the plot. Why does it matter what poor Tom or Lear is wearing? But I have read enough Shakespeare to learn that it's often in these irrelevant dialogues that the secret messages are hidden. These strange appearances of garments keep popping up and demand my attention. When I try to connect the dots and piece the puzzle together, I notice there are more places where this theme of clothing crops up. The first thing is that clothes hide sin. If we zoom out a bit, there's a clear pattern to Act 3. It roughly looks like this. Scene 1 happens outdoor, Kent sends someone to Dover. Scene 2 happens outdoor, Kent finds Lear and the fool. Scene 3 happens indoor, Edmund hears about the French army and decides to betray Gloucester. Scene 4 happens outdoor, Kent, Lear and the fool meet poor Tom. Scene 5 happens indoor, Cornwall plots with Edmund. Scene 6 happens in a shelter somewhere in the storm, kind of outdoor. Lear finds shelter. Scene 7 happens indoor. Gloucester's eyes get plucked out. The scenes alternate between the suffering out in the storm and the evil happening indoors. We are still looking at the theme of clothing, remember? The storm exposes Lear to the elements and makes him more naked. He's not only naked in the body, but also exposed in sin and under judgment. The evil things have nowhere to hide. Let the great gods that keep this dreadful puzzle o'er our heads find out their enemies now. Tremble, thou wretch, that hast within thee undivulged crimes, unwhipped of justice. Hide thee thy bloody hand, thou perjured, and thou simuler of virtue, that art incestuous. Caitiff, to pieces shake, that under covered and convenient seeming hast practised on man's life. Close pent-up guilt, rive your concealing continence, and cry this dreadful summoner's grace. I am a man more sinned against than sinning. Tremble, hide, because your crimes and guilt are going to get found out. Whereas the closed walls, like the rich garments, hide the wickedness and sin. Through tattered cloth great vices do appear. Robes and furred gowns hide all. Plate sin with gold, and the strong lance of justice hurtless breaks. Army in rags, a pygmy's straw does pierce it. Back and forth in Act 3, we watch the sinners bend low before the elements, while the evil in the castle goes unchecked. It gets worse and worse until Gloucester's eyes are plucked out. The second thing is the relationship between clothes and identity. The opening scene of King Lear is one of the most formal and grand. I mentioned this in the part 1 video. Just count how many people are on stage in one go. For the 2 Ian McKellen productions, both opening scenes are decked out elaborately. Men are in handsome uniforms, women are in jewels and gowns. Judi Dench says when she played Regan, she wore fur head to toe to show how powerful she was. Though others thought she looked like a giant rabbit. You have to listen to her memoir. I think King Lear is a wonderful playground for costume designers because the garments mean so much. Anyway, back to the opening scene where King Lear, dressed in splendor, express our darker purpose, says, "Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state, which of you shall we say doth love us most?" Divest is the key word here. It now means deprive someone of power, rights, or possessions, which is bad enough. According to Johnson's dictionary, which I always use for Shakespeare, it means to strip, to make naked, to denude. The divesting of his kingly power is mirrored in the divesting of his kingly garments, starting with the golden crown. This works the same with the hunted Edgar. The stripping of his identity is manifested in the physical disguise and nakedness of his body. While I may escape, I will preserve myself, and I'm bethought to take the basest and most poorest shape that ever penury, meaning poverty, in contempt of man, brought near to beast. My face I'll grime with filth, blanket my loins, elf all my hair in knots, and with presented nakedness outface the winds and persecutions of the sky. Poor Turley God, poor Tom, that's something yet. Edgar, I nothing am. Edgar, naked with a blanket, is not Edgar anymore, or Edgar is now nothing. This stripping reduces him near to a beast. He's hardly still a man. Lear's speech in the next scene mirrors Edgar. Edgar is stripped of his princely garments and his privileged life. Lear loses his 100 knights and is shut out of doors. Notice the keyword beast repeated here. Hear me, my lord, what need you 25, 10, or 5, to follow in a house where twice so many have a command to tend you? What need one? O reason, not the need. Our basest beggars are in the poorest thing superfluous. Allow not nature more than nature needs. Man's life is cheap as beasts. Thou art a lady, if only to go warm were gorgeous. Why, nature needs not what thou gorgeous wearest, which scarcely keeps thee warm. That line, allow not nature more than nature needs, man's life is cheap as beasts, reminds me of Survival is Insufficient from the novel Station 11, and before that, Star Trek. Station 11 opens with a character watching a production of King Lear. The author links them together, and I now just began to see how. If filling our bellies, staying alive, and bare necessities are all we care for, our lives do not have more value than the animals in the field. Lear uses clothes as an example. If you only need to keep warm, why do you wear these dresses? Those pretty clothes don't keep you warm at all. Maybe that's why Station 11 is so beautiful in its hopefulness. Survival is a brutal business, but there is more because we are not beasts. However, unlike Station 11, King Lear is much darker. When the human need is not met, does man's life still have value, or is it really as cheap as beasts? When Lear meets poor Tom for the first time, he can't help wondering, is man no more than this? There's a lot we can compare and contrast between Lear and Edgar. For example, Lear is the king at the beginning, Edgar becomes the king at the end. Another example is their madness. Lear's madness is real, Edgar's is fake. It's no coincidence that Lear and Edgar meet right in the middle of the play, Act 3, Scene 4. We don't see Edgar very much before this. He's deceived by Edmund, he runs away, and he disguises as poor Tom. 3 very short scenes. After Act 3, Scene 4, Edgar is present almost constantly, and Lear is missing from a lot of the action. So, what happens in Act 3? A lot of things. For example, according to our trusted Kent, Lear becomes mad in Act 3. In Scene 4, Kent says his wits begin to unsettle. In Scene 6, his wits are gone. Act 3 is key for Lear's transformation. The storm on the outside is the manifestation of the storm inside. He confronts his suffering and painfully tries to make sense of it all. Even that confrontation makes him mad. One of the main things he realizes is his humanity, that his basic human need is not 100 knights, but straw and hovel. I'm cold myself. Where's this straw, my fellow? The art of our necessities is strange, that can make vile things precious. As soon as Lear sets his eyes on the poor, mad, naked beggar, he projects his own misery onto him. Didst thou give all to thy 2 daughters, and art thou come to this? What have his daughters brought him to this pass? Couldst thou save nothing? Didst thou give them all? Now all the plagues that in the penduous air hand-fated all man's thoughts light on thy daughters. He has no daughters, sir. Death, traitor. Nothing could have subdued nature to such lowness but his unkind daughters. He sees himself in poor Tom. Why, thou wert better in thy grave than to answer with thy uncovered body this extremity of the skies. Is man no more than this? Consider him well. Thou owest the worm no silk, the beast no hide, the sheep no wool, the cat no perfume. Ha! His 3 young are sophisticated. Thou art the thing itself. Unaccommodated man is no more but such a poor, bare, foxed animal as thou art. Off, you landings. Come, unbutton here. Without silk, leather, wool, or perfume to put on, man is just an animal. The king is no different. If one's identity, one's being, is tied up with what he wears, what does it mean when Lear tries to take off his clothes to be like poor Tom? Is he trying to become nothing, unking himself willingly, like what Richard II did unwillingly? But the fool stopped him unbutton and take off his landings, so Lear, unlike Edgar, didn't become naked. To my relief, to be honest, when I was watching the shows. And although he lost his 100 knights, he still has the fool, Kent, and Edgar with him. When Gloucester says, "What, hath your grace no better company?" he doesn't know that the king is actually in his usual company. So, unlike Edgar, Lear never really divests his identity. Like he can't get rid of his wet clothes in the storm, he can't shake off his kingly title either. Even when he's mad, he knows he's the king. In the shelter just before Lear gives a phantom trial of his daughters, "Prithee, uncle, tell me whether a madman be a gentleman or a yeoman?" "A king, a king." Enter Lear, fantastically dressed with wild flowers. "No, they cannot touch me for coining. I am the king himself." "O thou sight, piercing sight." "The trick of that voice I do well remember. Is it not the king?" "Aye, every inch a king." Before he runs away from Cordelia's search party, "Come, come, I am a king, my masters, know you that? You are a royal one, and we obey you." Kingship seems to be something that can neither be given away by himself nor taken away by his daughters. In his disjointed monologue, he says nature's above art in that respect. The new Cambridge Shakespeare edition explains it as a king is born, not made, and cannot lose his natural rights, even when he tries to, until he dies. One of the last words Lear says are, "Pray you undo this button." The button that was not undone in the storm because the fool stopped him is now finally undone, and he dies. I've been wondering what changed Lear from a angry, proud fool to a humble, contented old man. The storm is a kind of baptism. When Lear wakes, it's as if he was dead and he has come back to life, reborn. The doctor says, "In the heaviness of sleep, we put fresh garments on him." With new clothes, there's new life. Maybe Lear realizes, like Gloucester says, that a man is but a worm, but also, as Edgar says, thy life is a miracle. There's no sense to the good things and bad things in life. For example, why do his daughters have such hard hearts? But he's fortunate to have a loving daughter who would forgive and forget. Maybe he realizes the storm batters him the same way as the beasts. Yes, he is a king, but he's only a mere mortal. Just a quick word on the productions I watched before I go. I watched two featuring Ian McKellen as Lear, a 2008 film and a 2018 play on stage. And I watched the 2018 film featuring Anthony Hopkins as Lear. Anthony Hopkins is a wonderful actor and the cast is amazing. Andrew Scott is the best Edgar. When he meets Gloucester poorly led at the side of a motorway with eyes bleeding, the silent horror and grief on his face instantly brought tears to my eyes. But I think for the role of Lear, Ian McKellen does the provoking rashness at the beginning as well as the frail old man with not many days left on earth at the end so well. This is formally the end of Shaketember 2024. Let me know what you think of King Lear and Cymbeline and any other plays you managed to read and watch, and of the event itself, any plays you'd like to read together next year. I'd love to hear your thoughts and we can continue the conversation all year round. Thanks so much everyone for all your thoughtful comments and discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.